especially to Dr. Ram, Triple IM, for inviting me for this important symposium and to share my thoughts on the DMPK perspective in development of herbal remedies. I think this is the only topic which covers the various DMPK aspects one need to consider when you are developing a drug. So before going into the herbal development of drug development of the herbal medicines, I will also touch upon how the small molecule development is considered, what are all the various DMPK aspects. So once you understand the DMPK aspects of the small molecule, it is very easy to understand what are all the bottlenecks in developing the herbal remedies. So since morning you are hearing about the authentication of herbal drugs, what are all the limitations, why there is a big inconsistency in getting the efficacy with different herbal drugs made from the various geographical regions. So considering all those things, once you have a authenticated herbal drug in hand and the extract is made and the biomarker, with respect to the biomarker, the extract is standardized. So then what we need to consider with respect to DMPK aspect, so that it will help you before going into the clinical trials. If you can take care of the DMPK bottlenecks, definitely you can see the success. So I will cover the few case studies also, so that you will easily understand what are all the bottlenecks, how to develop a herbal drug into a modern medicine. So, and again coming back to this present scenario, now you see the polypharmacy is very popular across the world. So you take AIDS, you take cancer, or you take any dreadful disease like metabolic disorders, atherosclerosis, everywhere you see the polypharmacy. Means several drugs are being combined and no one drug is able to cure. Even for small cold also, doctors are recommending 2 antibiotics. So they don't want to take any chance. If this antibiotic is not working, other antibiotic will definitely work, so the patient will get a quick relief. So even you develop a drug from the herbal extracts, so you tend to use a modern drug along with a herbal drug. So I need not to go in details. So morning several keynote speakers have expressed what do you mean by botanicals, what do you mean by herbal remedies, and what is the myth. So most of the times botanicals and herbal remedies are considered as very safe, but if you see the presentation down the line, so you can easily understand they are not very safe, and most of the times they cause the toxic events or adverse events. So however, if you can clearly understand what is the amount and what is the potency of the phytoconstituents to address for the diseases what Ayurveda and other alternative medicines are prescribing. And co-prescription of herbal medicine in the present day may also lead to serious clinical drug-drug interactions. We will cover that. So botanicals and herbal remedies and common issues with co-medication. As I said that nowadays in the present scenario it is not possible to give only the botanicals or only the pure drugs as a single entity. The polypharmacy is very much recommended, or co-medication is important. So if you can understand the interactions with modern basis, the drug interactions with the herbal remedies along with co-medication with the small molecules can be explained based on the pharmacokinetic or pharmacodynamic basis, or both put together. So the drug-drug interaction leads when you administer the herbal remedies with the small molecule. It may be coming through the pharmacokinetic issues. I will explain you what you mean by pharmacokinetic issue, and the efficacy is nothing but the pharmacodynamic. So few examples to cover here is majority of the plant extracts like St. John's wort, milk thistle, licorice, ginseng, garlic, and several juices nowadays very popular like grapefruit juice, pomegranate juice, cranberry, which leads to drug-drug interaction mainly because of CYPs activity and some other components which are playing important role in the absorption of the drug. And nowadays it is also known like flavonoids are a potential PGP inhibitors. We will see if this is a reality or the myth. So coming back to the traditional NCE discovery or new molecular entity discovery. So in order to understand the absorption process, we need to see the outline of the gastrointestinal tract. So once the drug is orally administered, it will encounter the several pH conditions. Like in pH, it should be stable, like at a very drastic acidic condition, it should be stable, means it should not be degrading. And when it goes into the small and large intestinal, it is very slightly acidic to the neutral pH. So in these different drastic pH conditions, the drug should not precipitate out. So when you administer a oral drug, like a small entity in the form of a tablet, small molecule, first it undergoes the disintegration, and after disintegration it breaks into the smaller particles, which is called as the dissolution process. So once the drug, like new chemical entity, comes into the solution form, then only it will be absorbed into the gastrointestinal tract by the process called the permeability. So after the permeability, the drug will enter into the blood stream, and from there it will be distributed, metabolized and excreted. So in most of the cases, the main hurdles for the bioavailability for the small molecule is the poor dissolution or permeability. Poor dissolution means if the drug is unable to convert from a solid to a solution form, this is called as a dissolution. If the dissolution is very poor or permeability is poor, you will not get a good bioavailability. So these are the main limiting factors in most of the drugs which will pose the challenge to develop a oral drug. So, and if you see with perspective to the herbal drug, you are giving an extract. So you really don't know whether this extract is being precipitated here or here, you really don't know. So under these conditions, you are presuming things that based on the Ayurvedic textbooks, you are saying that this should show the activity. But if you are unable to understand the real intrinsic problem of these, like dissolution or permeability of extract of a or a new chemical entity, then definitely you are going to face problem with the bioavailability of the drug or bioavailability of the herbal extract or the biomarker in the plant extract. So if you see, go further, so this GI tract is present with several, like this is the intestinal lumen and this is the blood circulation. So when the drugs comes under this GI tract, so it should encounter the two uptake or efflux mechanisms. So if the drug is substrate for efflux, though it is going in, it will be thrown out into the gastric lumen again. So effectively it is not reaching into the portal or systemic circulation. And similarly, if the drug is being uptake by these uptake transporters, and if any herbal extract is the inhibitor of this uptake transporter, again the drug will not reach into the portal circulation. So before you administer the herbal extract, you should know the herbal extract is an inhibitor of efflux transporter or an inhibitor of uptake transporter, or it has no effect on these transporters or the efflux transporters or uptake transporters. So why I am telling, without knowing this phenomenon of these herbal extracts, if you are tend to give along with already available drugs in the market, so these will be drastically affected and you will see the adverse events. So if any drug is a substrate for either efflux or uptake transporter, if you are administering along with a botanical extract, you should evaluate the effect of the botanical extract on these two transporter mechanisms. For example, if you take the PGP, which is being expressed here, which is responsible for efflux mechanism. So Vinca alkaloids, anti-HIV drugs, statins, I have given the example, few examples within the brackets, tyrosine kinase inhibitor, digoxin, calcium channel blockers, all these are the known substrates for the PGP. Similarly, the efflux transporters or the other efflux transporters are MRP1, BCRP are also called as the efflux transporters. So for MRP1, the Vinca alkaloids, camptothecins, methotrexate, doxorubicin, anti-HIV and tyrosine kinase inhibitors are the examples. For the BCRP, the substrates are flavopiridol, camptothecins, TKIs and antibiotics and antibiotics. Similarly, if you see the popular examples for the substrate for the uptake transporters, OATB 1B1, 1B3, statins, ezetimibe, SN38, olmesartan are the examples which are readily being transported into the systemic circulation by the uptake of these transporters. So it is also documented that genetic variation also brings the variability in the OATP activity expression in the patients to a greater extent. So this is very recent study wherein they have clearly demonstrated that genetic variation will play the expression of the OATP in the human beings or in the patients. So taking all together the efflux transporters and the uptake transporters, so the commonality among the PGP, CYP3A4 and OATP is any herbal extract which is affecting the either PGP, CYP3A4 or OATP or all together will vary the oral drug absorption, and that will be coined as a barriers to the bioavailability. So PGP 3A4, if any drug is a substrate for PGP or substrate for 3A4 means, if it is a substrate for PGP means it will not enter into the systemic circulation, so the bioavailability will be drastically reduced. Similarly, the drug is a substrate for 3A4, before reaching the systemic circulation, it is pre-systematically metabolized, and similarly, the bioavailability of the drug will be reduced. On the contrary, if the OATP is the substrate for particular drug, so OATP expression is increased by a herbal extract, then you can see the more drug into the systemic circulation. So, however, all these three put together will pose a challenge with respect to the drug-drug interactions. Going further minute details, so you can see the CYP's role in the metabolism of the commercial drugs. Most of the drugs, like close to 50% of the drugs are metabolized by CYP3A family, followed by 2D6 and 2C9. So if any drug which is affecting the function of 3A4, means if the drug is getting metabolized by 3A4, if the herbal extract is blocking the 3A4, automatically the parent concentration of the drug is increased. Similarly, the quantities of the several CYPs in liver are predominantly by 3A4, followed by 2E1, 2C and 2D6, and 1A2 also is expressed to a percentage of 12%. So this is the classical example of St. John's wort, most extensively studied herbal extract, and this extract is been standardized with respect to the content in it by Hypercin. So the main phytoconstituents in the St. John's wort are hypericin, quercetin, hyperfolin, biapigenin. All these are known to be the CYP inducers, means they will induce the CYP, so the production of the cytochrome P450 in the liver will increase. So by increasing the CYPs in the body, if any drug, like if you take example of atorvastatin, which is a substrate for 3A4, so when you give a St. John's wort along with CYP3A4 substrate like atorvastatin, St. John's wort will increase the content of the CYP, so the efficacy of atorvastatin will be reduced. So in other words, if any extract like St. John's wort or other extracts are the inducers of the CYPs, means there is no problem with respect to the drug interaction. The main problem is failure in the therapy. So why? Because the CYP content is increased, so more of the drug is being metabolized. So it is documented that by giving a 900 mg of St. John's wort extract for 14 days, there is increase in CYP3A4 content in males to the extent of 50%. In case of females, the content is increased to 90%. Similarly, St. John's wort will also reduces the PGP expression, increases the PGP expression. So any other anti-cancer drug which is a substrate for PGP will be advantageous for this St. John's wort, because more PGP is expressed, so the more drug will go into the will come out from the more drug will be effluxed out. So there is a effective decrease in the bioavailability of SN38 by 38%. And similarly, the popular HIV drug, anti-HIV drug, Indinavir, the 81% reduction in the bioavailability of the Indinavir was noticed by co-administration of St. John's wort, because this increases the expression of the PGP. And several studies were done with St. John's wort and cyclosporin. Almost 85 clinical studies were done, and out of these clinical studies, majority of were not done with respect to a standard protocol. These are very sporadic clinical trials were done, so there is no proper documentation of these drug-drug interactions done in clinic between St. John's wort and cyclosporin. So if cyclosporin, the content of the cyclosporin is decreased in the systemic circulation, so there is a therapeutic failure because the drug level will be decreased. So similarly, the cyclosporin has very narrow therapeutic margin. So for some reasons, the cyclosporin concentrations are increased in the body, it will lead into the tissue rejection. So whenever you are administering the drugs which are playing the CYP's metabolism, which are influencing the CYP metabolism, and the drugs are having very narrow therapeutic index, means you should evaluate them prior to giving a co-administration with the herbal extracts. The another example is grapefruit juice, which is an inhibitor of 3A4, and we also the inhibitor of a uptake transporter OATP 2B1. So the montelukast is a substrate for both, means it is being metabolized by 3A4, and it is also being absorbed into the systemic circulation by OATP 2B1. So what happens here? So when you block the uptake by blocking the OATP 2B1, the amount of montelukast going into the systemic circulation will be reduced, but the grapefruit juice inhibits the CYP3A4, so it is compensated by increasing the content of montelukast in the systemic circulation by blocking the effect of 3A4, which is a major determinant for its metabolism of montelukast metabolism in the human body. On contrary, so the fexofenadine is a substrate for OATP 1A2, but it is not a substrate for PGP and 3A4. So whenever the compound like fexofenadine is a substrate for uptake transporter, if you give grapefruit juice, so the uptake is inhibited, so it will lead to the drug-drug interaction. So it is called as a classical pharmacokinetic drug-drug interaction, because the absorption of fexofenadine is reduced by co-administration of grapefruit juice, because it is blocking the uptake transport of the fexofenadine into the systemic circulation. So this is considered as a pharmacokinetic drug-drug interaction, and similarly the metabolism and uptake, this also comes under the pharmacokinetic drug-drug interaction. Another classical example is the interaction between a glyburide and grapefruit juice. Though glyburide is a OATP 2B1 substrate, so what happens in case of fexofenadine, it is blocking the uptake, so the exposure in the human body is reduced. But in the case of glyburide and grapefruit juice, though it is inhibiting the uptake, the glyburide is taking another absorption process, which is by passive transport into the systemic circulation. So the grapefruit juice is not affecting the systemic exposure or bioavailability of the glyburide. So in this case of glyburide, when this mechanism is blocked, the drug is getting absorbed through another mechanism, which is called as the passive absorption. So in this case, you are not seeing the drug-drug interaction. So here I would like to stress upon the point. So once you know the drug is a substrate for uptake, if you are doing any drug-drug interaction with a fruit juice, if this is blocked, and based on the in vitro study, you should not conclude any point that though this uptake is blocked, so you cannot co-administer, or you cannot say the contraindication of grapefruit juice with the glyburide. Because in reality, in the in vivo, if this mechanism is blocked, the body is finding out an alternative mechanism for the absorption of the glyburide. So one should also consider the other mechanism of action for the absorption of the small molecules which are being commercially available or being recommended for the treatment of various diseases in human beings. So, and most of the fruit juices, the effect is very transient. So apart from the grapefruit juice, the other common juices are used as pomegranate juice, apple juice, cranberry juice. All these juices have very transient inhibition of OATP uptake transporters, and they don't have any inhibition of the CYP except the grapefruit juice. So only grapefruit juice is documented. It will inhibit the CYPs, but other fruit juices, they have only very transient, like 1 hour to 4 hour inhibition of the uptake transporters. So when they evaluated these drug-drug interactions, whatever they have seen here between glyburide and grapefruit juice, or fexofenadine and OATP, so when they have done the clinical studies, they have not seen any clinical significance of this interaction which was seen in the preclinical species. So by this we can conclude that based on the preclinical data, you are not supposed to conclude any clinical significance. So whenever you do a clinical trial, you should have a blank arm or a perfectly designed clinical trial, crossover design, and then only based on the outcome you should conclude whether this drug-drug interaction will lead into a meaningful pharmacokinetic advantage, or it will lead into a pharmacodynamic drug-drug interaction. So unless you do a proper designed clinical trial, you are not supposed to extend any preclinical data into the clinical significance. So if you see here the grapefruit juice in a cartoon form. So when you administer as a grapefruit juice and drug-drug interaction with felodipine, so when you administer through orally, the 100% of felodipine is going into the stomach. So this is not the site of absorption. So when it goes into the small intestine, which is zoomed here, so fexofenadine, I have explained that it is an inhibitor of CYP3A4. So in reality, without any grapefruit juice, only I think 30% of the fexofenadine will reach into the systemic circulation, because it is a substrate for 3A4. I mean to say, in the small intestine, it is extensively metabolized by CYP3A4, and out of 100%, only 30% will reach into the systemic circulation. But when you administer along with the grapefruit juice, which is an inhibitor of 3A4, so out of 100%, 90% will go into the systemic circulation. So once the drug is being absorbed into the systemic circulation, it will be taken up through the portal vein and reaches into the liver, where majority of the CYPs are expressed. So if you consider the expression of CYPs between liver and small intestine, so if you consider CYP3A4 in the body is to 100%, 10 to 15% of CYP is expressed in small intestine, remaining 85% is being expressed in liver. So in liver also, out of that 30% which has reached to the systemic circulation, again will be chewed up by the CYP3A4 which are present in the liver cells. Only 15% will go into the actual bioavailability of the felodipine in absence of a grapefruit juice. But if you give a grapefruit juice, again this CYP3A4 metabolism in the liver cells is also being blocked, and the bioavailability can be increased by 3-fold. So this is another words. So what I am explaining here, this is a pharmacokinetic drug interaction which is explained by a cartoon form between grapefruit juice and fexofenadine. Similarly, the another juice which is extensively being studied is cranberry juice. So cranberry juice, when it is, I think many of the US firms are giving a contraindication that it cannot be administered with a warfarin, because cranberry juice will increase the antithrombotic effect of the warfarin. So first it was thought that cranberry juice is a potent CYP2C9 inhibitor, but very recently in 2011, when they have taken a exclusive substrate of 2C9, that is flumiprophen and cranberry juice, and when they have done a drug-drug interaction in healthy patients, cranberry juice did not affect the flumiprophen plasma levels in humans. So it was concluded that when you do a clinical trials in normal healthy human beings, so it has no effect on the CYP2C9. Then the researchers went behind this problem and they found out that the drug-drug interaction is due to the displacement of the warfarin from the binding site, which is due to the salicylic acid levels, increased salicylic acid levels in the serum by cranberry juice administration. So here you can see the pharmacodynamic interactions. So whatever we have seen in the earlier slide, these are all pertaining to the pharmacokinetic drug interaction, but here you are seeing the pharmacodynamic interaction between the cranberry juice and warfarin. So now it is believed that the warning between the warfarin and cranberry juice is due to pharmacodynamic interactions rather than the pharmacokinetic interaction, which was believed that it is an inhibitor of CYP2C9. And the other case study which I am going to explain here is pomegranate juice. Pomegranate juice has been shown the inhibition of CYP3A4 and 2C9, and also a potent inhibitor of PGP pump and sulfur conjugation. And all these studies and this document were documented based on the in vitro. So when they have done the clinical trials based on this in vitro study, there is no translatability, and it was well documented that there is no effect on 3A4 or 2C9. So in other words, in vivo experiment demonstrated that there is no increase in AUC, but no elimination no change in elimination indicates that PGP did not affect the hepatic CYPs. So in other words, what I mean to say that majority of the drugs which are acting as a CYP3A4 or PGP inhibitor are happening at the small intestinal level or enterocytes level, but not reaching into the hepatic cell level. So in other words, whenever you administer a herbal extract, the drug-drug interaction which is coming from pharmacokinetic interaction is happening or is attributed due to the PGP inhibition or CYP3A4 inhibition at the intestinal level, but not at the hepatocytes or the liver level. So in other words, whenever you are administering the herbal extract, so none of the components or active components of the herbal extracts are reaching into the liver. So hence it was again unambiguously demonstrated with several herbal extracts that the hepatic CYP content has not been changed following the oral administration of any herbal extract. So based on this observation, my recommendation is to administer these botanicals as prescribed in the form of a Ayurveda. So if you see in the Ayurveda, majority of the drugs, botanicals are administered as a form of a gritas, means they are coated with a fatty, like gritas means the herbs are extracted with ghee or butter or something. So they are more lipophilic. So you mean to say that again it is well documented in research that the drug is more lipophilic, means it is more readily getting absorbed into the systemic circulation. More hydrophilic means it is rapidly being eliminated from the body. So that concept you should have in mind when you are studying the botanicals in the form of for a pharmacological effect or for a co-administration with the existing drug. So if you know that these fruit juices or herbal extracts are known to be an inhibitor of CYP3A4 or PGP, you should formulate them as prescribed in the Ayurvedic preparation or various medicinal textbooks, not in the form of a suspension or something. So then conclude that it has no effect on the absorption, or it has no efficacy or something. So this is a wrong statement to put forward and publish a paper that these herbal extract, whatever is mentioned in the Ayurveda and herbal textbooks, are not proven scientifically. So you need to get as closeness as to the preparation of the herbal extract, what was mentioned in the Ayurvedic textbooks or herbal textbooks, and take the appropriate model and show the drug whether herbal extract is active or not. So the challenges of what we foresee from the DMPK perspective is, I think all these were discussed in the morning session by keynote speakers. Phytoconstituents in herbal products are not subject to rigorous testing in animals and humans, and there is a lot of variation between batch to batch, and there is no strict regulation, and it was told by several speakers. Consumption of herbal products is mostly by older people with their innocence, or without telling medical practitioners they will take the herbal product based on their knowledge or based on the information what they get from the elders and other people, going to the herbal practitioner and take it. So that will affect the conventional drug efficacy. And when you see the older people, their physiology also quite different when you compare with the normal healthy population. So that also we need to see. Once you see the drug-drug interaction in older people, you should see how the liver and kidney are functioning in the older people. Based on that, you should extrapolate those findings into the regular population. So just because seeing the drug-drug interaction in older people, you should not make a contraindication for that, how these drug-drug interactions are happening between herbs and drugs. I think this is the last but one slide. So the framework for development from DMPK perspective is thorough characterization of herbal extract. I think it was also touched by several speakers before me. And from DMPK perspective, perform preclinical testing, very systematic testing, to understand the pharmacological effect of the herbal product or the botanical, pharmacokinetic, metabolic, tissue distribution, toxicokinetic profile. So by knowing all these things, so you can assess the risk and benefit analysis which will favor the clinical development. I think with this, I will stop my presentation. Thank you.
How the case have influenced. I have a case in point, many of the people in the country have valve replacements and all, and are on Coumadins and warfarins and whatnot. And if they have been taking products, they may present with thrombosis or hemorrhages otherwise.